Hello and welcome to another Witcher 3 REDkit tutorial. Today we're going to talk about how to create entities. More specifically, we're going to create a new custom NPC that you can either use in some of the contents like scenes or cutscenes, or having it spawn into your world and etc. Mainly we would be focusing on to use the entity template editor and its preview and its graph editor, where you can use components to actually construct your entity. Let it be its appearance, its body parts, or anything that's basically consists in it. And also we will make use of entity template inheritance, where we have a number of already defined base templates or entity templates that you can inherit and reference from, so you don't have to define everything by yourself from scratch each time you want to create some more generic content. At the end of this session, we're also going to talk about how to create a simple encounter, where encounters are pretty much used to spawn NPCs in a more deterministic way. So in another tutorial of ours called the quest tutorial, we talked about how to use communities to spawn monsters or actors into your world. And the communities were basically could be used anywhere. It wasn't, deterministic to the location. But the other approach or other method that you can use is a more generic one, where you could just place an encounter tree or a spawn tree in some of the layers of your world and define it to actually spawn a set of or group of NPCs. Now, this has a downfall that it's only specified to that very location, to that very layer. So without any further ado, let's jump straight in. So I created a brand new project. This is completely empty. All I did I just opened the editor with it. And let's check out the asset browser, where we could search for some of the already made characters and take a look how they look like. So in the default tree, you can actually see this folder called characters. And in here, you can actually see the folder called NPC entities. And going deeper, you can actually see that there's a main NPC folder and secondary NPC folder. Checking out the main NPC folder, you will realize that, or you can see that some of the main NPCs, let it be Vesemir or the mostly used actors throughout the story, are stored in here. And going back, some of the secondary NPCs will most likely entail the actors that would be used in some side content or side quests and so on. So let's see, maybe we could just check one of them, and by double clicking on it, it will actually open the editor for that entity. And as you can see in the entity template editor, we will have three main panels. By default. At the left, you will see a very similar viewport, such as the main viewport, where we could just actually see the preview of the actor or the entity that you're currently opened. Down here, you can actually set the light position, so you can see it more clearer. Also, you can navigate the same way how you would navigate in the main viewport. So if you right-click on it, you can actually rotate the camera, and pressing the WASD keys, you can actually navigate yourself in it, or maybe with the mouse if that's more comfortable for you. So you can get a closer look to the actor. At the right side, you will see a graph editor. Right now, there's a lot going on. But essentially, this graph editor is responsible for illustrating or representing all the components and building blocks that this entity is made out of. So sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult to understand, or just it's a little bit more convoluted because they are placed at the top of each other. But do not be afraid. Most of the times we don't have to touch the graph editor that much, because with other methods, you can actually just insert already made templates at this view, where when you inherit a base entity, all its corresponding nodes will be placed automatically inside the graph. So most of this stuff, like content of the graph, will be placed automatically by just simply, setting the class or inheriting from a base entity. But so yeah, this is the second port and like second main panel that you will see most of the times when you use the entity editor. And on the right bottom, you will also see all of these tabs that will basically have some sort of information about your current entity. So in node properties, you would probably guess that it's responsible for showing all the properties of the currently selected node. And the other important or interesting thing is that if you left click on the background of the graph editor, you can actually see the root properties of like the most generic properties of the entity. So you can either select the nodes or multiple nodes or the background itself to actually see the node properties of it. In the template properties, as we previously checked, so you can use these base entities that will mainly be helpful to actually place in contents that will be used in a very, very regular way. And you will probably get used to the idea that if you have something more generic, like a chest or a door or like an NPC, then most likely there will be a base entity for it, for all the obligatory components that all NPCs have. So you don't have to, define it yourself by scratch. If you want to take a look at the base entity file where it resides, you can actually double click on this entry here. So if you double click, you can actually see that the asset browser will open its place, and you can also open that one. So, and you can check the components or edit them if you would seem, or just simply create another base entity and use that. And it would, locate it in the place where it should be, or where it would make sense. And if you have another template that you want to add in here, you can actually use this plus button called add template include. So you can, append this list, and right here at the bottom, this section actually consists, list out all the components and asset files and everything that this base entities use or made out of. So this NPC base way consists all of these elements that are listed out, which is also important if you want to, make sure that everything that you want to use for your base entity is in here as well. And, you can also use this filter to just show the entity templates that, this base entity is used. So entity templates are pretty much can be used as a brick or building component for building up some other bigger entities. Okay, so instance properties can also be used out of if you use some sort of component. Right now we don't have it on the quest graph itself, but it's a very rare occasion that we're not going to pretty much discuss that much about this segment. Appearance is a more important one if we are talking about the NPCs itself, because this is the this is the tab responsible for all the body parts and basically everything that's actually visible of the actor. So body parts, the dresses, and the haircut and everything. And we will also, there's a lot of tabs that you can debug and use. If you want to, use an effect or some pre-made animation to the actor, then you can use it in the effects menu. But to keep it simple, we will just simply make the appearance of the actor, and also in the voice tags, what I wanted to just relate, that voice text is actually going to reference these appearances that you define in here. One NPC can have more appearances, which is neat because you don't have to create another asset if you want to change one part of the appearance of the actor. You just need to define another element and add an appearance here, and you will just append this list in the same entity file, which is neat. And you will see that once I select one of the appearances, you will see all of the building components of that appearance, of the selected appearance. So you can actually check what are the entities that it's currently using. Let it be the body parts or the dress or the head or everything. And yeah, I think that's pretty much that I can just make a summary out of this entity template editor. In the main toolbar, you can use different filters for different lots. So if you want to, check out your entity in different level of details, as you would just, simulate how far is the player from the actor, then you can just check how it simulates that. Also, you can have the same manipulation tools that you would have in the main viewport. You can move the actor or rotate it or scale it or objects around it. And also you can show the wireframe and different filters such as that. And you can also save it. So let's just create another entity template by scratch, and let's create our own custom NPC. So in the secondary NPC, let's just create new asset. And it's an entity template, and let's call it something like my new NPC. Yeah, we'll check out the folder as well. And if you don't find it by scratch because of this preview view of the asset browser, you can also, it's the grid view, so you can check the list view option and it will be a little bit more visible to us. So we checked out the Irina entity template, and now this plus sign actually tells us that this is the NPC that we have created. So by double clicking, I will open it. And you will see that now everything is empty. There's pretty much no preview and no nodes. It's completely empty. So for us, the first thing we should do is to define an entity class for an NPC. So in the template properties tab, I will just press this select entity class button. And in here, you can see all the possible classes that you can use, and some classes also define some subclasses and so on. And you can also search for the class that you're looking for. So let's go with NPC. You can actually see that there's the see new NPC, or something more specific. Let it be that we would want to have a merchant NPC, then you can use that as well. But for us, the see new NPC should be good for now. And yeah, not much is happening right now. We still don't have any components or nodes inserted in. So since we're creating an NPC, we should inherit some base template that will help us construct the basics and the must-have things for our NPC. So if you hop on over the characters base entities woman base, let's say that we want to create a women NPC. In here, you will see that there's a folder called NPC base W, and also with the same name, an entity called NPC base W. So let's select this and make sure that this is actually being selected, because that way we can actually insert its reference using this plus button called add template include. And now once I inserted it, you actually see that the included templates have one element plus and also all of its consisting assets. And in the node graph, it states all of the nodes that is coming from this inherited base entity, and also all of the inherited nodes are color coded with this red color, so you can actually determine that these are coming from an inheriting class, a parent class called NPC base W. So once we have that, we have everything that's essential for an NPC, but we still don't have any preview. We don't have an appearance assigned. And taking a look at the tabs, we don't even see the appearance tab. So some of the nodes will actually contain the context of the properties that you can use at your proposal in here. Since we haven't defined a component that is responsible for the appearances, there will be no tabs in here assigned to appearances. So we have to make sure that we create that component first. So if you right click at the background, you will see that there's a select component option. And in here, we can see all the components. Like it's a really similar selector view like we use the entity class for, but this time it's just the components. And in here, if I search for appearance, there's a component just for that purpose. And now we can actually see that there's an appearance component. Taking a look at the node properties, you can actually rename this component to something else that would make more sense to you. Let's use that, for example. But the important thing is that now that we have a component, an appearance component, we can actually see that there's a new tab appeared called appearances. And now we can actually start defining a new appearance for the NPC. So if you see that there's an odd appearance button, so let's check that. And each list item of the available appearances will have a unique name. For us, let's add a new name like my new NPC appear1 or anything that would make sense to you. And now we can actually start searching some body parts and dresses that would make sense. For now, I'm just going to use the asset browser and search for some body parts. So if we check out the characters, there are some entities that are already made, but also there are parts and assets that we can use to construct one in the models. And in here, we will see that there's a common folder, woman average. And there you go. There are some body parts, hair and heads. So first things first, maybe we should add a body. And in here, let's take a look. Maybe let's use, I'm not even sure, 0, 1. You can also search for a body part. For now, I already made a list for myself to make sure that we have something that's the same in the tutorial documentation. So if I search for this body part, then in about a few seconds, I can actually see that. And in here, we're just going to use this entity for now. But that really doesn't matter. The point is that we want to have something that is essentially a body component. And if you having that selected, you can use the plus button to actually add that appearance template. And as you work with these appearances and add more and more stuff in here, you can actually see that the node graph is also appended. Okay, so let's move on. And let's add some more stuff to this. So I'm just going to search for the head this time. And you can just use anything that's inside the woman average heads folder. And I'm just going to go through all of these different body parts. and there. So now I actually had everything that I wanted to have with this appearance. If you're not sure what to use for yours, you can feel free and pause the video and actually search for these. As you can see, these entities have all the relative paths that you can search and also include in yours. So if you're not sure why you don't see the preview as clear as day, then maybe you're just way too zoomed in. So you can just navigate your viewport and navigate back your camera like mine. Now it's more clearly visible. Let's change the light position scale so we can see it more clearly. And there we go. We have our very custom NPC with some appearance that we applied to it. And as you can see, you can notice these check marks that can be used to filter out some of the body parts that you do not feel necessary of. Also, in the appearance list itself, if you having it checked, then it's going to make your that appearance as the default appearance to use for the external references. So let's say that you reference this entity from inside the scene editor, and you want to make sure that this appearance called my new NPC appear 1 should be the one appearance that needs to be used for that scene. Then you can just check this with this checkbox, and it's going to make sure that that is the appearance that will be used in there as well. And since we're having our appearance finally for the NPC, let me use this scene editor example once again. So since we have an appearance, voice tags are also paired for this for these appearances, so that if you use your scene and you use voice tags to reference actors, then in here what you can do is to simply select some voice tag for your actor or create a new one in the config file. And this config file can be found in the gameplay globals somewhere. Yeah, it's either in here or globals. There you go. So in here, you can actually see all the configs, and somewhere in here, there are one CSV file that will consist all of the available voice tags that you can use in here selection, in this selection. But this time I'm just going to, use something that's already defined to save some time. For example, which brewers, there you go. And as you can see, it's already, set the appearance that we have created in here, because we assigned this as the default appearance. And after this, you can actually, if you have this NPC in your scene with the specified voice tag called which brewers, then it will look like this, like it would look like in this preview, because it uses your appearance. Now we can go ahead and save it, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the very generic way of creating NPCs. And from this point, you can actually use it for spawning it inside of your world. Let it be on the layer. Okay, so I have a world loaded in to actually use it to preview, like preview the NPC that we just created in here. Choose add layer, NPC test, maybe some any name, and in here use the dynamic entities and gameplay, or maybe communities. That would make more sense. So let's create it. And at the bottom, it should be located in here. Yes. And it's already activated. That's the one that we've been working on. So I'm just going to pull this aside a little and drag and drop it into the main viewport. And it's pretty important to actually have an activated layer. Otherwise, you won't be able to do that. But right now, all that we wanted with this is to just preview the NPC, how it would look like inside of the world. And once that's done, then actually we can start, thinking about how to actually spawn it. Because right now, of course, we could just start the game, but the NPC wouldn't react to things because it doesn't have any AI or behavior specified to it. So it would just, stand there in this idle animation and wouldn't do much. So for start, of course, this layer technique can be used to put entities that would be somewhat static. So for example, doors, or for chests or buildings, you can do this method. You can just drag and drop stuff in and you could just place it and that's that. But for NPCs, for this time, that would make more sense to us is to make the use out of encounters and spawn trees. So our next step would be to create a custom encounter in some layer, maybe in this layer, and use that to spawn NPCs. So now that we tried out our NPC, let's create another layer, but this time for our encounter that will be responsible for spawning different NPCs. So I'm just gonna make another layer in the root level. Add layer. My encounter as the layer name. Let's go for dynamic entities as well and tag it as communities. Hit on create. And I'm probably gonna get rid of the NPCs so it won't distract us. Let's delete it. Yes. Okay, and now it's gone. What we want to place in here is an encounter area. So if you have this layer activated, right click on the main viewport, select gameplay area, encounter area. Then you will see that the layer will be populated with a new encounter, C encounter class. But we don't really see anything in the debug filters. So we have to set the debug filter that's responsible for showing areas. In the settings, editor options, debug, there's a checkbox called areas. And right now, as soon as I check this filter, we will see the areas as well. Since we're going to work with waypoints and like spawn points, I'm going to check in the waypoints as well. And you can see that there are much more stuff is visible for now. And to get rid of all this kind of debug stuff, if it's too crowded for you, you can do this temporarily by using this brush icon called clear debug stuff. So you will only see the game content that way, and you can just, toggle it. So having that encounter created, we're just going to scale it a little bit bigger like that. I just press the space bar so that I could, switch over the scale object option. So spamming the space bar will change the different gizmo modes. So now I was just using the scale. Maybe make this area a little bit higher. You can also use its properties over here and set the height to 4. And that way it will set the actual height of your area and not the transform height, if that's more reasonable for you. But yeah, as soon as we're done with this, we can actually open up another editor called the spawn tree editor, which will be responsible for initializing and basically building up the overall spawn logic for the entities. So you can either open it with using the right-click context menu and hit on Edit Spawn Tree, or on the properties side, you will also have another option in Encounter Spawn Tree. There you go. So in the C Encounter Properties tree, you will have an option called Spawn Tree. And in this field, you will have this tree icon on the right of the cell. So if you hit on it, it will open its corresponding encounter editor. So in here, we can actually see that this editor looks a lot like the quest editor, you will have graph view right at the right panel side. Down at the bottom, you will be able to set different entity templates as definitions to reference them in your graph and put them in the logic. So if let's say that we want to spawn a group of wolves, then we can just reference all the types of wolves that the spawn will entail. At the left side, such as the quest editor would use it, you will have all the properties that the currently selected node will have, or right now we don't have any nodes in the graph, so the base properties of the trigger area or encounter area will be present. So first things first, let's start by right-clicking on the background of the graph and hit on Select Face. Now, faces can be defined to determine in what condition or in what context you want to spawn your entities in. So these will just basically be used to choose between multiple child branches based on some conditions. Right now, we don't want to have anything complex, so we will use the select phase as the default one. You can also rename these, but since we're using only one, this time I don't think it's that not necessary for us. And this select phase actually has one default phase node. And from here, you can actually start, implementing some nodes. So if you take a look at these connection pins, if you right click on them, you can add all sorts of stuff like initializer lists, spawn entries, selectors, parallel and random and so on. So let's firstly choose something that makes our lives a little bit easier. We will just basically include an already existing spawn tree, and then having that, we will shortly discuss some of the building elements of it. So we don't have to define each and every last node by ourselves. So as our template, we will search for a spawn tree for the wolves, and it will be located in the living world, event templates, encounters, approved templates, and since we're using wolves, then we're going to use the wolves folder. And in here you will have 3 different spawn trees dedicated to a custom level of these wolves, and the lowest level will be level 5. So let's just use that one for now. So having that one selected, we can actually reference this by using the spawn tree reference. So if you hit on this connection pin and you use the option add include file, then the connection pin will turn to this triple dot icon. And if we select this by left click, you will see this node called include. And if you select this, you will have this spawn tree field. And here we can actually reference that file that we have selected in the asset browser. And with this arrow icon here, we will see right at the bottom left to spawn treat resource attached. So I'm just going to click on that, and now it will fill the reference for that spawn tree. So right now, if I open this triple dot once again, then I will be able to see each and every node that this spawn tree is including. So this can be used as a template for us. So we have a top initializer list. Initializer lists are basically like one of the most commonly used nodes that basically just tell how the spawning methods are initialized. So each initialized list will have some sort of structure like this, where you have spawn entries, some guard area definitions, a spawn strategy, where we just define how the different entities should be spawned. For example, should it be a hidden spawn, where entities will only be spawned once the game makes sure that the player cannot see them, and it's at least it's far away from a specific distance, and also a reference to the actual waypoints or spawn points that are used to actually, place those entities in to the world locations. So, so include file, as we said, this will use previously made spawn tree inside the encounter. So this is actually used as a template. We didn't define this by ourselves, which is good. Since the encounter only looks for spawn points and guard areas, there should not be any issues with duplicated tags, although these will, as you can see, having them selected, these nodes are actually predefined some stuff in it, like the referencing tags. So we will later on make sure that these are the tags that will be used in the in-game world components, such as areas or spawn points such as that. Since we included this as a reference, we cannot edit these properties. These will also be disabled, as you can see. But having to use the same tags is possible. So as long as you don't overlap many encounters with the same exact included spawn trees, you will be fine. You can use the same tags with different encounters located in different layers. So having to look at the spawn entries, you will see that we can actually define stuff parallelly, where we will have a pack mainly consisting with an alpha wolf, and alongside the alpha wolf, we will have the generic wolves surrounding that alpha wolf. So each of them will have a spawn limit, which will be default to 1 to the alpha wolf. So this pack will only consist one alpha wolf. And the generic wolves will consist of 6 different entities. And the guard area will make sure that these entities, once we get in our reach, the player gets in their reach, they will attack. But as soon as the player leaves this guard area, they will no longer, chase the player. And also the spawn strategy is something that, what is the current range or possible range that the spawn can happen, visibility, and so on, and the spawn points. Okay, and since we already set this hooked up, I think one of the things that we can talk about more is to define the wolves itself. So the definitions down there. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed a thing here. So yeah, top initialize list. These are actually responsible for adding different properties to these particular branches. So as you can see, we can actually use parallel nodes. So you don't have to, define a different encounter for each and every spawn tree that you want to use for the similar purpose. You just need to create another node called parallel, and then you can just place these different branches parallelly. So there's one thing that maybe should be important, just to make you understand that you can just, use the same file. You don't have to, duplicate yourself or repeat yourself each time you want to do that. And yeah, that's all the definitions then. So hitting this plus icon, you will see that now I have already some columns and a table structure with one record. But right now we don't have anything set. So the definition name should be something that would make sense for the alpha wolf first. So let's make the alpha wolf definition first. So let's call it alpha wolf, maybe level 1 or something. And the entity template will be actually, the reference, the entity template of that wolf. So let's search for that. I think it should be somewhere in the characters. NPC entities, but this time we will look for monsters that we can kill or the player can kill. And in here, we should search for the wolf. One thing that can help us searching is to actually apply this filter called search in depot or current directory. Since this icon turned into this folder icon, right now I can only search within the contents of the currently selected folder called monsters. So now if I search for wolf, probably going to either find this werewolf thing or use some entity called the wolf itself, and I should find something. There you go. So wolf level 1 alpha. Having that selected, I'm just gonna drag it somewhere around here. The point is that I'm having that selected, and I'm gonna use this arrow button to actually reference it, like so. Perfect. And I think that's it. Everything else can be left as default. So that's for the alpha, and now we should just, define the base wolves as well. So for that, let's just call it wolf level 1, and it should be located somewhere around here. Let's use this wolf level 1. I selected it using the arrow button. I can actually see that as well. So for the spawn entries, you will see that these are already referencing these definitions. That's why I added these definition names, because these were the ones that we defined. You can also see that in these entry nodes, the spawn entry nodes, it will have some other properties like the visibility. So since it's set to spawn hidden, then the game will make sure that these entries will only initiate once the player's far away enough and also not looking at the actual spawn nodes. So this way we can actually, avoid having the wolf spawn right in front of the player, which would actually lose the immersion of the game. So right now, I think we're pretty much done with most of the stuff. What we should look for is the selected guard area node property, and that's supposed to be this one. And I'm just going to copy the tag reference because we probably need to have it pretty soon, and also create a guard area in the world. So next to the actual encounter area, let's make it a little bit larger. One small note, these encounter areas can be basically any size that you can imagine. You can also set it like a huge scale where it would almost, cover the whole map. You can also do that because these encounters are mainly used for no man's land spawns, like each and every monster in a field. So you can basically stretch out in any size that you would imagine. And let's make sure that it's high enough. So I'm just going to make it a little higher, 10, like so. Also, let's go with the scale even higher and put it so it would clip to the ground, like so. Perfect. So now for the guard area, we're just going to make sure that the layer is still highlighted and it's activated, so we don't have to double click on it. From that point, we can right click on the viewport, call gameplay area, and select Alt Guard area. We're gonna scale it a little, not that wide as the encounter, but just as wide so that we can test out how the walls will chase the player once we get inside. All right. And now I'm just going to make sure that we have the tag reference for it. So if you having this guard area selected, you will see that its properties have a CNode tags. So in here, I'm just going to paste the copied tag that we used in the spawn tree. And another tag. So I'm just going to set the other one as well in the CNode group. So now I'm just going to make sure that I save this. Yes, I want to check out. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is to actually apply the spawn points. So for that, we will use a pretty similar group gameplay, but this time we will use the spawn point group, and in here select odd spawn point. And as you can see, since we have selected the waypoints debug filter, we can actually see these tube thingies that should be represented, represent the spawn points. And, just to make sure that we don't only use one spawn point, we can actually maybe copy this. So right click at it, select copy, and maybe paste it somewhere here. And also maybe here as well. So at least 3 of them should be enough. And another thing, the same way as we set the tags for the guard area, we should set some tags for the spawn points as well. So for that, I'm just going to make sure that this spawner waypoint tag reference is used for these spawn points. So you can see that the tag is LVSP Wolf Group 1. So I'm just gonna push it over on my other screen and make sure that it's actually used. So one by one, I'm just gonna do this individually. If you decide to just use one waypoint, set the tags first and then copy them and paste them. Maybe that would be more sufficeable, but now I just gonna do this individually. So the tag should be LVSP for spawn point, wolf, group, and 1, like so. Just gonna copy that, select the other tags, and let's repeat that for the others as well. So, okay, let's save it again. And from this time on, you can actually already initiate it. So this encounter will be initiated once the player gets inside, but also there will be, custom cases or unique cases where you would just, let the encounter be controlled from a quest graph. And for that, you can use encounter manager nodes from the quest graph, but that you can actually search for once you are in a quest editor. But this time, we just want to make sure that this will be initiated as soon as the player gets inside of this encounter area. So to test out this gameplay mechanic, we just want to use the simplest method to initiate the gameplay. In the main toolbar, you will see these joystick icons, and one of them with this tick icon, it will state that this option is used for playing the game on the current layers only. So if we click on that, you will see that the loading screen will be placed on the main viewport. And as soon as the loading is finished, we can actually start testing out the gameplay. Okay. And once we're inside the encounter area, we're inside already. But since we set the spawn as hidden, and I started the game by looking at the spawn points, the walls will not be spawned right away. So let's make sure that we get some distance from it and not look at it. So once we're inside, you can see that the pack of walls are spawned into the specified spawn point location. And once I'm far enough from them, they can actually leave the pursuit. Also, while you're in gameplay mode, you can press Alt-Tab and you can put your encounters in debug mode and spectate them, how they are initiating and how they are working in the background. If you select your encounter and right-click on it and select debug spawn tree, you will see the same graph that you have been editing in edit mode, but this time all the nodes that are currently, are doing their thing, they're being initiated, they will be highlighted, and this way you can actually follow the flow of the currently activated encounters. So I think that's pretty useful as you would work with more complex stuff. And I think this is all that I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions, please do reach out to us. And without any further ado, wish you guys a good day and see ya.